Carver Zoning Bylaw Study Committee on October 27th. It appears all members are present. Can you talk, maybe talk louder? I'll shoot for the mic. All right, so the meeting is called to order. It is 5:33 and let's see, according to our agenda, discussion on potential changes to transfer of development rights. Bylaw, review and discuss the following principles. But we have a couple guests here tonight and I didn't know if we were expecting them to speak or give some sort of presentation or overview.
Right, so we have Bill Napolitano here from Serped, as well as Helen Zinkovich, who's up there. Oh, good, we have her up there on the screen there. Hi, Helen. And then we also have Lorraine Tripp, also here as a guest. And so, Bill and Helen, did you guys want to give the overview of the principles? And then we can work our way through the other pieces of the bylaw. And just to kind of back up a little bit, Bill and I had and Helen had a conference call last week where we kind of went through the bylaw and thought that probably the best thing to do is maybe kind of split it up, have discussion on kind of receiving area, and discuss what factors or criteria should be included in a receiving area, and then have kind of discussion with this group, and then Helen, myself, and I, and Bill would kind of get together and kind of put something together to kind of refine a kind of a definition or criteria for receiving areas. And then bring that back at a future meeting.
Excellent.
And then at the next meeting, have a discussion regarding the receiving areas. And then we would kind of take the information from the group and then put something together and then bring it back so that way we'll have two pieces that we can put together as one whole, and hopefully that will address the kind of missing links in the current bylaw, and then address any concerns that the committee members have. So I think probably kind of going back to the presentation, one of our initial meetings, we had the TDR presentation, and so kind of what is a transfer development right. We thought we should just kind of give a quick overview of that. And so it's basically where you set up a system where you're trying to preserve land in town rather than seeing it developed. It offers a way to, if that land were developed, what the number of units would be, and then having a system where we would transfer those units to another parcel in town that would have increased density of development. And so that's kind of the purpose. It helps the town where the town may not have enough money available to purchase all the open space it wants, but it's a way to help the property owners who own the large tracts of land. They can get some value out of the land, and then the land is protected in perpetuity under the Carver bylaw, and then development is focused into what we call a receiving area. And currently the town master plan discusses using kind of the Carver villages along Route 58, coming up Route 44 as the area to receive that development. And that's kind of the basic purpose, and the principles are preserve open space, provide development rights to property owners that otherwise could develop that land, either through subdivisions or through A&R lots being split off the roads. And in exchange for that, concentrating development where the town has already said where it would like to see development go. So kind of next up, sure. Oh, just one thing. I have this thing up as high as I can get it, so we're having trouble hearing you. So maybe speak loudly and and very slowly so it doesn't all kind of blur together.
Yeah, I think that was a great summary. Tim, I would just add the importance of, or the benefit, it's not both ends, right? So you're spending development away from an area that you want to preserve, but at the same time, you're spending it towards a place that has many potential benefits, like existing infrastructure that you can build off of, transportation, or kind of a long time ago, these medium transit, that might not be the case in Carver, but near more of a village center, a place that can accommodate that as well. So there's kind of benefits on both ends there. And that the system kind of, since it is an unconditional development method, I would just stress the importance of there being a little bit of an economic incentive for developers to use that path. Kind of gotta give them a little extra reason to kind of go out of their way to go through the difficult process of the CDR, which they might not be familiar with.
Thank you, Helen. Do you have anything to add, Bill, to that?
No, that's pretty much
Covers the gamut there. So in your packets, there's a copy of the bylaw itself. I said, okay, I'll just strip it out of the zoning book so it's easier to kind of reference. And it kind of outlays the process. So the first thing is, of course, you need the TDR overlay map, but that's what we don't have. But down at section 2722, it talks about to develop the transfer development rights. A property owner has to file a preliminary plan with the planning board. So this is a bylaw that starts off in the zoning bylaws, then it goes over to the subdivision rules and regulations, where we have the there's guidelines for preliminary subdivision plans. And what I did, I also excerpted section 5 of the subdivision rules and regulations. And so in that, it explains the process of what a developer needs to provide the planning board to submit and have the board review and approve a preliminary plan. So in there's, because we talked about criteria, there's a number of requirements in that preliminary plan that need to be provided on the plans itself. So I just kind of made a little bit of a summary. So one of the things you have to do is, for a preliminary plan, put in the zoning district and boundaries on there. You also have to put the location of major features. So that would be rock outcroppings, waterways, wetlands, flood zone areas, general flood or soil classifications, the boundaries of proposed lots. You have to calculate the approximate uplands and wetlands. And then you also have to put in the boundaries of wetlands area, the 65-foot and 100-foot delineations. And then in addition to that, so when someone is laying out their lots, they also have to comply with the underlying zoning requirement. So in Carver, most of the lands outside the main part of town are RA zone properties. And so that requires 60,000 square feet of lot size, 150 feet of frontage on a public way. So in the case of a subdivision, you have to lay in that street and make sure you have 150 feet of frontage for each of those lots.
Jim, can I just interject
Sure.
one quick thing?
Sure.
When you're doing the wetland boundaries, you also have to show the 200-foot riverfront area,
Okay.
which is kind of important for some of these areas because a lot of people, especially one in South Carver, is bordering on two major brooks.
Brooks. Thank you, Sarah. And then one of the other requirements is that in order to build on these lots, 70% of the minimum lot size has to be dry land, so it can't be wetland. So out of that 60,000 square foot minimum, you need 42,000 square feet of dry land in order to build on that site. And then some other of the items kind of outlined in the TDR bylaw for consideration as criteria, is visual prominence, potential vista impairment, ecological significance, fragility, its importance as farmland, value as recreation, value as future town water supply, and then there's a category of more significance. So it has three or more A&R lots, and public drinking water supply again, habitat for rare or endangered species, and that's Natural Heritage or Endangered Species Program. Parcels contiguous to state or town conservation land, parcels with special recreation value, parcels containing structures, features, or trails of noteworthy historic significance. So I just wanted to kind of outline what we kind of currently consider one in the development process for any kind of land, and then the second list I read has to do with the TDR bylaw, what the planning board is required to look at and consider in terms of looking at a prospective parcel for as a sending area. I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments.
We have a question, Jim.
Sure.
The question is on the sending areas, the land that you're going to send, can that be wetland, the bogs or everything, or just solid building lots only?
So the way I read it, it looks like you only get credit for the lots that are created that are not strictly wetland areas.
Strictly wetland.
Okay, so you might have wetlands that might be part of a lot,
Right.
but so long as that lot meets the 70% dry requirement,
You could send it.
then you could, that's my understanding.
Okay, but a regular bog or a swampland, I can't say that's sendable.
Right, so that puts in a different category, I guess.
Well, my question, Fran Mello, to that would be, does the developer have to go into an area, a setting area, and say, this is what I could build there, lay out a whole subdevelopment, say it would be 8 houses, and then, so that we know as a town that it's not just, it would be built if we didn't protect it.
Right, that's kind of what you're required to do. That's why they have the creation of the preliminary plan showing what the potential development could be.
So they have to do 2 plans.
Right, so they have to do, first of all, the sending area plan, and then you come up with the base number of units of what you could do under the current zoning bylaw without waivers or major waivers from the planning board. So you have to come up with that initial plan, the initial number of units, and then that gets factored in, based on the formulas as to how many TDR units you get. So I think the base unit is 1.5 units, and then if you have really significant resources or open space lands, then you go up, the planning board could then make a determination that they will get 2 units, a bonus of 2 units per the house lots that they would have had. So say if you had 10, if it was wasn't anything significant, then it'd be 15 units. And then if it was really significant, then you could potentially get up to 20 units to
So it's
transfer.
really, I mean, when you talk about significance, I know we have an outline here of what is supposed to be significant.
Mhm.
One of the things that I wonder about, it says public drinking water resources. Does that mean all these receiving areas will go on to the town water supply? So as not to affect the wells of the people around them?
So I think they're looking at it in terms of being a potential source of town drinking water. So if you have a area, a parcel of land, a certain size, and if they can say, well, this piece of property is a potentially good source of public drinking water, then that would be the characterization. Doesn't mean that on the other side of it, it's necessarily going to get town water.
Well, then how are we going to protect the people around a more densely populated neighborhood?
Right. So-
Considering that they are on well water.
Right. So that would be kind of a discussion that would have to take place on the sending area side. How do we support this more denser development? Do we have public water? So we have the North Carver Water District. And do we work out a plan with them to say, okay, we're creating more density in this zone right here within the North Carver Water District, and we need to make sure that you can supply that water to potential future development that's being transferred from other areas. So you would need you would need to consider that as part of it. But to separate the two, the area that might have a source of public water or be a good source of public water, that's different. You're just transferring the units from there to another area. But in that case, you would have to consider, okay, do we need public water in this area to be extended to those newer homes, more denser development in that area?
Well, I guess I have another question. I have lots of questions. My next question would be, if we set up sending areas and we set up receiving areas, how, if it's a bylaw, it becomes a part of a permitting process, and how do we protect what could change for the people in those areas?
Okay, so the existing homes having newer development come in
Yep.
that may be denser than what their homes are.
Well, I mean, so we lay out a bylaw, we vote in a bylaw, we do our due diligence, we choose the areas, and then once it becomes a bylaw, we stumble. We figure out, like we have in past bylaws, maybe we didn't make all consideration. And we set up 60,000 square foot lots. I think it was in 2006, maybe 2008.
1998.
Was it? I thought it was before
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, 1998.
After that. But we set it up in order to make sure, because of our well water, that we don't get too dense. And this allows a high number of density units in a town that's only 38 square miles. So that's, don't want to see us stumble.
Right. I think probably so the town has a master plan and it has bylaws. And so my thought process is that for this area that we say we want to move all the development to, or focus the development, say, on the Route 58 corridor, I think it would need kind of like a little mini master plan to say, okay, you need, in order to make this work, you need maybe some changes to the bylaws, to reduce the lot sizes, but only if it's served by, public water.
So that could be something that we put into the bylaw.
Right. So you,
Okay.
If I may, oh, sorry. Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So to Fran's point, Sarah Hume, to Fran's point, one of my main concerns is that we will be getting town water. Because the last thing I'd like to see is the build out of this town at 32,000 people, which is what Serpent projected for us at one point. And what happens when you put the water line down 58, now you don't need the separation between the public, the private water and the septic.
Yep.
Don't need it. Which, is fine if that's what people want, but I'm not sure that we're prepared to have, 124 more miles of roads and 32,000 people in this town. So that worries me. I don't know how to solve that problem, because you do want the concentrated development in the areas where people have told us they want it. So,
right.
but it could be a serious issue.
Right. And I think you handle that by the type of development. So you would have to look at, there's some communities that have what they call traditional neighborhood development type of bylaws, where the development is more compact, so there's less roads. So for example, at one point, Makepeace was looking in South Carver to put some major developments down there.
I remember.
And so in that case, you're stretching out the town's resources, because you have police that have to go all the way down there to service that area. You would have a fire department that would have to maybe put a fire station down that way to service that area. School buses, instead of just traveling the roads they do now, would then have to extend down that way to serve an area. So you're expanding the variety of services to service that. But what the town master plan is calling for is more compact development, kind of off the Route 58 spine, so that, and then also looking at setting up things so that they're more walkable, and you could ride your bike. So there's kind of some infrastructure, other infrastructure that also needs to be considered, sidewalks, and then also, bike lanes, and making sure that, the roads that do go in, you're not spreading them out all over the place. Because that's, that's been kind of the typical, reaction in a lot of communities, where they went out and they put 1 acre zoning in, or 2 acre zoning. That kind of spread everything out, but then that made it, more distance that, town services would have to travel to kind of get to a location.
Just so you're aware, I'm familiar with the master plan. I was on the committee, master plan committee, so I'm aware of that. That doesn't really address the private water, public water issue, in my opinion.
Right. So that would be something that would have to be addressed in, further discussions.
Now, what is the availability of water in the, I see 3 districts, but I do believe there's another village district hidden in town.
Can you speak up a little bit?
I'm sorry. What is the availability of water for high-density housing in the 3 village districts? Or
There's 3 public wells. There's the North Carver water. There's one out here, behind the library.
now, is this one close to maximizing its potential with the?
I don't know.
Okay.
I honestly don't know. And then there's one in South Carver that's at Carver Village. I guess theoretically it can be extended. I don't know.
David Aldrich. I mean, I know we're talking about sending and receiving and the impact on all this stuff, but right now we have, I don't know how big the project is in South Carver that Makepeace is putting in now. Isn't it going on with the ocean spray plant? Isn't there a planned development down that way by Cranberry Village?
Nothing that's currently active. I know years ago that there were plans to put major development down that way, but I think on some of those areas, they have solar projects that have been approved.
Well, I mean, the woods that goes from Cranberry Village all the way to the town line by the dump is completely a wooded area with tons of acres down there, so I don't know
I think they're putting a solar project there.
the whole distance there on the right-hand side.
I don't know if it's the whole thing, but it's a large.
It's like almost 100 acres of projects work. It's separate projects, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
So, and then,
2 to 3 right on Federal Road. So there's an existing solar project. There's one where they're going to extend that solar project into a phase 2. And then at Hammond Street, which is apparently a dirt road that comes into Federal Road, there's another project that's been approved for that area. And then there's 276 Federal, where a solar project has been approved. And so those, they've been kind of in a holding pattern. They were waiting for an Eversource study to be completed.
units for development right now, how many are in the South Carver area that are already in the works?
So you're talking about solar projects now?
No,
Oh, housing?
housing.
Yeah, nothing at this point.
Okay, and then Carver Center, is there anything proposed in the center?
Nothing at the time other than we had I'm thinking about Silva and Route 58. There's a lot where there's going to be
Well,
some.
off our South Meadow, there's a project
In
there.
South Meadow, yeah.
So how many units is that?
That's, what was that,
60, right?
54, I think?
54 units there?
Yeah, 54 units there.
Okay, and then in North Carver, is there any projects that are there?
There's some already approved projects, and so
How
one of
many
them,
units up there?
so one is Gilbert Estates, which is Yule Drive. So that one has been kind of dormant, and now the developer is actively working to put houses in there.
That's on High Street.
That's off High Street.
Yeah, right off of High Street. It's 10 house lots right now. So they have, they put the road in, and they're marketing the lots right this moment.
So, and then I know that there is a big commercial project that's planned in North Carver, where they're talking about a $1.1 million, whatever, we don't know.
Yeah,
We're not
distribution
told, but
facility.
we're not ever. But that's gonna greatly impact the growth of this town. So I would think that somebody should come in and address the board in regards to what's going on in North Carver, because I think a lot of sending and receiving districts are gonna be predicated on what goes in there, because it's greatly gonna affect the population of this town. I mean, I don't think there's been a business in this town that size ever. And that includes Ocean Spray or because I don't even know. I don't even think the high school hires as many people for that. So I know that one of the development areas, receiving areas, and I know we're talking sending areas, is the village in North Carver. I don't really know what you're gonna build there because I don't know the acreage of land that's left to do anything with. You have the center of town, I guess, that with the church and the area, there's areas here, but I don't know how big those circles are, what they encompass, or what they're gonna do. I don't know if we're gonna take the park across the street and put up high rises or not, but, and then South Carver, you're talking about the village district there. I don't know what that encompasses because between the property by the Marcus Atwood house and Dickie Johnson's property across the street is really the only land that I see in that section. And then I know that on the other side of the pond, that's a sending district that was put on that map. It's already been subdivided by a lot of those owners because I think the Davidson family divided that land a while ago. I don't know if they took that out or if it's still registered, but I don't know how many lots of houses that were eventually agreed upon up there. I know that there's a peninsula that sticks out that wasn't gonna be built and saved to go out.
That was Bowman's Point.
down by Dee Dee's house. So I'm just saying, I don't know if they're still there, and I'm not trying to say this or that, but I think that we have these conversations about receiving and sending. I think that really what we need is an overview of what Carver really looks like, because I think the amount of land that you could go from in South Carver as you're going down Wareham Street, I don't know, what is that road where Gilmore's on? I mean, Gilmore owns a lot of land that's wooded lot. If you go all the way from the corner of his bogs by the S-curve, by the curve there, and go all the way to the town line down there, I mean, there's huge acres back there, but I don't know, you know, when we design all this, what do we got, how many acres of sending does it take to produce, what's the maximum build-out, I guess, in the village district? What's the, in North Carver, what's the build-out capacity for Carver Center? What's the build-out for the village district in Carver? Because it only sounds like, from the reports that I read and everything, that those are the only districts that we're talking about receiving right now.
Right, I believe that was, Bill, was that kind of what the town had already discussed, was those areas?
Yeah, the master plan, talked about potential build-out areas where the town has carrying capacity and the ability to develop. One of the exercises that the town went through was to actually look at the areas that they'd like to focus development in and the areas that they'd like to preserve.
But then in preservation, and tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm not an expert at this at all. So once the threat from a developer can be that I'll put 40B or 40R or 40 something in there, and then you go. But once the town gets to that 10% mark of affordable units, then we take the power back.
Yeah.
And then, you know, then it would go to, you know, we can have our bylaws read whatever we want, we need 10%, but when you read the bylaws the way that they're currently structured, and I'm not wrong, it's like 10% of the project, or 15% of the project. So these guys are putting up 60 unit developments, and 6 of them are affordable, and then 54 of them are selling at price that all of a sudden we're responsible and get no credit, and we're dealing with the density problems of trying to get out the road. I mean, you talk about fire trucks trying to get to somewhere. If you live in a dense population and you put 1,500 units in Carver Center, good luck for that truck getting to your house. You know what I mean? I guess it's better to burn one house than a whole village, but I mean, these are the things that need to be discussed. I mean, you know, we don't have the capabilities of, we talk about water supply, we don't have fire hydrants in this town. So if you put up a big complex, it's by a fire truck. I mean, a pump rate, unless it's near a pond or something else. So I would like to see the areas that are being described as a receiving area. I mean, a sending area is pretty good. I mean, who really cares? I think the majority of the towns a sending area good. If you feel like you want to sell that, go ahead. And I know from experience, when we talk about file a preliminary plan, if you have like 4 acres of land or 5 acres of land and you're trying to prepare a preliminary plan as to what the build-out would be that, and I know Adam's worked in the engineering field, so he may be able to give you better advice than me. They're pretty expensive though. They're not cheap to draft and figure out what your maximum density is on your property. So when you say setbacks and everything, who's to say the guy with 6 acres doesn't try to say, well, the maximum density on my property is 25 units because I could put 40B there as well. Do they get those transfer rights for everyone that a 40B would be on that property to send? Or is it just the Form A house lots or whatever else? Because I know, I'm just saying, you go to a planned development area, even a small development, that stuff gets crazy money. It's expensive. I mean, call an engineer, call some of the guys that are around here and say you got a 5 or 6 acre land and you want to do a max out build on that and what it's worth. It gets pretty expensive because then I don't know how, when it says the planning board determines how well that plan has to be. If you have to start getting in there and designing septics and all that, because we don't have any of that hookup, so it's not, you have to do all that perk testing, you have to do all that engineering work on it, because it's not simply put this unit, you get a hookup charge and you're free. You have to develop that. a pump station and everything else size-wise to figure out how much you can build out. So, like I said, I just have more concerns about where the areas are, and I don't know where they are. I really don't know where they are, like, so I don't know how everybody else feels, but that's just...
And I think that's something that has to be worked on, is what are the areas, and then what are the, what are the densities that people are comfortable with, and then what are, how do we service those areas to...
Or can we spread it out a little bit more? Why did the receiving stations have to be so small? Why couldn't we have limitations for areas, different limitations for the amount of build-outs in areas? And maybe we can't. Maybe somebody will tell me that's impossible. These guys are the pros at this stuff. I don't know. But I'm saying if the build-out isn't gonna work in an area because it's so small and the density can't handle it, then some of these other areas that you say are too far out because services can't get to them, well, maybe it would be better to have at least some of it out there to give them incentive to build out there so that it spreads it out a little bit in this town, because we got one street, one lane going up through this town, and that's all we got.
So what you'd be looking for is probably a visual representation of what's planned in Carver right now. What do we look like right now to work in harmony with your priority protection area, priority development area maps, and another thing is your open space map. Jim sent that around too. And that's going to factor into how you put together a transfer development rights bylaw also. You can talk about the types of housing that you need, the types of housing you encourage, how efficient they have to be. Obviously, you're going to look for things that help to recharge your aquifers. You want to keep local water, local things like that. Keep your water supply in play. But also your bylaw has to have a purpose, a means. Jim was talking about purpose before. A purpose, this is what it's all about. A means, how do we do it? And a reasonableness. What do we expect? How do we execute it? How do we deal with these things? So you have systems in place to do that. What you really have to do is probably develop the public education tools that you're talking about so you can see it. Because a lot of times when you can see it visually, you can see how it would translate. And as far as putting too much in one place, you can kind of steer that too. Here's what you need, here's what you want, here's the type of development you're looking for. But the trade-off there is like we were saying. There's been maps around, Sarah and I, we go back to 1998. That's why we know that things happen then. There are things that you've been wanting to preserve for a long time. And they're really critical to the future of Carver, because one of the things that people always say, and when I go into a town, you say you're the experts. I'm not the expert, you guys are the experts. This is your town. But when I work with the town, it's good to plan with the town and not at a town. And as a board, you're going to want to plan with the town and with the people who want to come in and use your transfer development rights bylaw, which right now, honestly, needs a few tweaks, needs a little work. If you had friendly developers who want to come in and use it, there are things that are actually stumbling blocks, and that's what this committee can do, really improve it, so that you have a way to work with a developer to get what you want, they get what they need, and the town will look better. And the big thing has always been, if you look at your open space plan and your master plan, it's what can we do, and it gets to what you were saying, what can we do to preserve our community character? What makes Carver Carver? What do we like about Carver? I was listening to you before too. What do we like about Carver? And I know from fact, I've seen you before too. You've been on a lot of boards over the years, probably special permit granting authority too, so you've been through all of this. So how do we keep Carver Carver? How do we keep the look? But how do we meet the needs? Because the population will grow. That's one of the things that you got to think about right off the bat. Somebody said, it's a fact of life. Development will occur. Growth will occur. So it's going to be, gets to the root of what you're saying. How do we want to grow? Where do we want to grow? And what type of growth makes the best sense for Carver? And there are areas where you do have carrying capacity. So if we can help you with an educational tool, maybe something like that, that series of maps that you can put side by side by side, and you can see, here's what we've always wanted, here's what we said in 2017 that we wanted, here's what was planned in the past. We were talking about South Carver before. There was a planned neighborhood development down there with the Makepeace when
6,000 units.
Yeah, they were going to put like 6,000 units. They were basically 3 towns. They were going to put a ton of units in. So that was a planned neighborhood development down there. Now look at how that's shifted over the years. Like you're saying now you got 3 solar projects down there. And what has it done? Has it made good use of the land necessarily? I mean, one of the things about solar units, you know, it's helping with the greenhouse emissions and the things that the state wants to do to help combat climate change, cleaner energy. But over the last 5 years, 25% of the open space that's been lost in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has been due to clear cutting of fields and loss of edge habitat to accommodate solar development. So again, you got to balance that too. How do we weigh it? What do we want? How do we do it? So this is why we get those visual tools there with the written tools that explain to you what you have for a bylaw, what you might need for a bylaw, and how we can work together to improve the bylaw so that it makes it good for Carver to use, good for probably a friendly developer to come in and use, and everybody can get what they need. That's what we got to do then. That will help answer a lot of the questions you put out there, and it will bring into play the history of the bylaw, how it was developed, and there have been points in time when it was orphaned. I believe I did the kind of the history and background of that presentation that Helen did that was beautiful about the history of the bylaw. You know, 2001 coming out of the master plan with Larry Koff to actually put together TDR because that's what the town wanted. 2004 it was supposed to go to town meeting, but kind of like, yeah, let's put it back to the drawing board. So 2005, tweaked in 2006, 2008, 2009, and along the way, you forgot about the map that was supposed to go with the bylaw, which is why you're asking these types of questions right now. You really don't have a map to reference. You have to talk about your planned neighborhood development, which is kind of floating out there in the periphery. And the maps that you have brought up since then came up with these priority protection and priority development areas that went along with the South Coast Rail Corridor study. But again, they weren't adopted the last time the bylaw was tweaked in 2009. So you guys have a bylaw right now that has a paragraph in there that tells you kind of how to use the bylaw and what the bylaw is about, but there is no reference map. There's really, it intimates that there's kind of discretionary power of the planning board, but not. So these are the things you got to nail down, because these are the holes, and these are the holes that could, give you the types of things that you don't want, but it also makes it very hard for the developer to approach you guys and say, I like the idea of TDR, but how do I finish it off? Here's a preliminary plan, but what do I do? Where are the exact points of contention? Where are the exact points of negotiation agreement? These are the things we got to do as a committee. This is how we nail it down.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, I believe so.
So to Bill's and David's point about using visuals, so the last meeting, Jim sent us, this was part of the packet, this is the Town Carver Community Priority Areas 2017, it's out of the master plan.
Yep.
And down here, I know you can't really see, but I circled, there's, what's it called? Okay, so these were priority development areas, right down here. They're in dotted purple lines. If you take a look at the open space and recreation plan, that's that green area there. It's a preservation area. And it's a preservation area because it's the confluence of the Indian Brook and Crane Brook, which then flow into the Weeanton. So that's that whole wooded area down in South Carver on Tremont Street.
Federal Road?
Excuse me?
Federal Road?
No, Tremont Street.
Tremont Street.
At the end of Tremont Street, just before the Wareham line. There's I don't know if you can see the picture, but it's this whole green spot right here. And that pretty much corresponds to the thing on the master plan that was circled. Now,
But isn't that, if you're talking about the land across the street from the Council on Aging, that land?
no,
She's talking about,
South Carver,
it's parcel
58,
listed.
58.
Okay.
land behind Deacon's all the way
No,
down.
it's beyond Deacon's, okay? It's to the left and to the right. There's the Slocum Gibbs has that reservoir,
Yeah.
wetland over there. On the right, there's
That peninsula that's up for sale, and on the left-hand side?
I'm just showing you the visual.
Yeah, no, I understand, but that's what you're talking about, right? They have
Yes,
that
and
force field, you go through
unfortunately-
the gate, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Very guys.
right. No,
Those
it's below
are the
there.
right after the
Very
walls.
guys left.
It's south of the very
Yeah, it's
back.
below, yep.
And it's before the last house on the town. So it's all that land in there,
Windows and bricks on it. Yes.
which has been called designated priority development site in the master plan, but in our open space plan, it's just the opposite. So it's when you put these two things together, you say, oh, wait a sec, maybe we need to, if we're gonna have a map, maybe we should like use both of these together and come up with some sort of compromise map. I don't know what else to call it, but
So Sarah, are you saying that the Carver Open Space Protection map and on the community priority area, that 05204, which is slated for development, is actually something that we should be protecting?
that's right, that's this green area here. Only the green area is wider than that. And it's, again, it's because of the confluence of all these bodies of water.
Yep.
And of course woods and so on. And then just as I was going out the door, or I would have sent it to everybody, I found this, this is the priority firefighting water supplies. Okay, so as Duke pointed out, we don't have town water. Yeah, and this they got from a number of sources. The fire department, in my opinion, it's the only map I've ever seen in Carver that has all the ponds named correctly. Well, they would know, because that's what they use. And they use the reservoirs and the brooks and the streams and rivers, and you can't see it at all from here. Actually, I can't even look at it with my glasses right now, but I will send it out. When you blow it up on your screen, it's really clear that those are spaces that should be looked at too. You know, maybe a bunch of maps together, maybe we can come up with something.
And Sarah's making a really good point here too, because I was working with them back with doing the open space plan back in 2010. We did some stuff, and you can see between 2010, because that was a 5-year plan then. They were projecting 2010 to 2015. 2017, when you're working on your master plan, community priorities have changed, and maybe recognition of what they wanted in certain areas, which is why we say, you know, we can have maps, we can, you know, nail these things to certain areas on maps, and sometimes, and this is something for you guys to decide, again, plan with you, not at you, not telling you what to do. You may want some flexibility in there to try to decide, but again, flexibility, sometimes you can, you know, sometimes you play with fire, sometimes you don't, but it gives you the opportunity to look at a property and assess it and see how you want to use it and see if it fits all the criteria you're looking at for preservation. And it could be historic preservation, it could be even landscapes. A lot of people forget that fact. Sometimes you have cultural and historic landscapes, they get totally bulldozed until you're looking for them. People say, oh, that's where this used to be. You know, which is, again, what you don't want if you want to keep Carver. So this is the thing, when you put together the bylaw, look at what you want, how you want to do it, how much you want to anchor it to certain areas, or if you do anchor it to certain areas on a map, do you want to leave yourself open for a little bit of interpretation in case there's land right outside of those areas that you've anchored on the map that could be included in it? Because what Sarah was just pointing out isn't that entire area that was green before, but it's a chunk of that area that all of a sudden could be gone. So this is the kind of thing you look at when you look at the bylaw. And again, you look at the purpose, the means, and the reasonableness, and see how you're doing it. And you put yourself on the other side sometimes too. If I were a developer coming in and here's the bylaw that we've collectively put together, could I use this? Is it easy for me to use? Do I understand what people want? Have we made our wishes apparent and clear? And have we made the engagement process simple enough that I could come in and do this? Because you're right, you're going to have to file a preliminary plan, which, again, isn't cheap, like you said. And I'm going to have to come in with a final plan. And is it there? Is the means there to do this, to execute the bylaw? So
But some of that bylaw stuff, and I don't want to get ahead of it, but some of the bylaws with this transfer of development rights, they're also making it so that we make it friendly for friendly development. So they say, oh, let's loosen the reins in these certain areas. And there's nothing necessarily saying that they won't come out, build the density up, and then all these preferred areas that you're saying that we're trying to preserve don't get built on too. There's no guarantee in that. So you're going to increase density in some of these areas just based on the bylaws that they're requesting that we reduce it, and then they may get 1 or 2 transfer rights, but they're going to increase X amount of units because the bylaws in the town have been relaxed in certain areas. So you can't always count that for every unit that goes in there, an acre of land is gonna be preserved. I don't, not necessarily seeing that. It may, but I don't know if it's truly gonna happen that way. I mean, you have to kind of wait as you go along, but in some areas in town, and I go up 495 all the time. So if you look at Raynham, Mansfield, all those areas, where they building all their houses, all their big apartment complexes, right on the highway. They come in and out and in and out. They're commuters, and they go to the grocery store and they go to bed. I mean, I think we have a great asset because we have that Route 44 character. That we have all that land from where 44 is, on 44, from 58 all the way over to Spring Street.
Yep.
That, I don't know how many units could fit in there. So it may be an area to get laxed. I mean, other places it might not be so because it's just crowded density and water resources. That's all I'm trying to point out.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Chair, on the corner here.
Mr. Tripp?
Sure. Just to make a comment too, is that when you crafted this bylaw, one of the points that you made up about the capacity of your water systems, of your lack of water systems, lack of sewer systems, you build into the bylaw that the developer is required to provide the infrastructure to service the development without any investment from the community itself. And there's a variety of ways. That's actually, the best thing you got right here is this land use section.
Yeah.
If you read through that, it's a roadmap to address all these issues as you go through this process. If you look through it, it's already gone through a big public process and a lot of thoughts gone into it. And it actually lays out a lot of these things that you can build into the bylaw, or fine tune the bylaw you have. Because that's really the issue here, is you get a bylaw that's a little bit broken and not completely usable, but with a few tweaks and discussions that you have now, we could straighten it out so it's actually a usable bylaw. But really think about future infrastructure where you want it. And Sarah's exactly right when she says you don't want to drag water all the way down if you don't have the capacity or the wherewithal to service the development that's going to create. Right now, we have a water main that needs additional pressure. You've got 100,000 gallons a year capacity from Middleborough. You're using only 20,000 gallons.
I don't think we have any water from
We don't
Middleborough.
use Middleborough water.
Wherever the water comes from there, the North Carver Water District.
It's not Middleborough, it's
No.
Carver.
That's Carver.
Is it Carver Water? I'm sorry.
Yep.
When I met with the water department, I wasn't clear. But so the thing is you have extra water capacity, but you don't have the pressure. So that rural development project, which is over 300 acres, the warehouse, the warehouse transitional, as part of their build out, they're required to put in a water tower so you have water pressure. Will they ever build that? We don't know. But if you create an overlay district in this north area, like the gentleman in the corner said, that could be part of, getting that done, whether it's them or someone else that comes in there to pay for that infrastructure. So, those are the tricks that, developers should pay for the infrastructure and not burden the communities when they come in. It should be that kind of a give and take, And you're hearing that from a developer. That's really what the goal of a community is, to make sure you negotiate these things or build it into your bylaws so that it doesn't add additional burden, but actually could be a net positive in tax revenue and the ease of providing services and preserving open space and water quality and all that.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I want you to talk so much.
Please. No,
I just want to follow up on what...
We're on an open discussion, so I want to hear from everybody,
Okay.
please.
I want to follow up what Warren said. I couldn't agree more. It's something that we discussed at the select board meeting the other night, because people have to understand if the developer doesn't pay for it, or totally, or if it's a private-public project extending a water line, if the public domain has anything to do with it, we're going to see betterments. And, we need to know this way in advance. I'm personally not in favor of them at all. But if you're going to do it, you need to give people a long time out, maybe 5 years, something like that, because it costs a lot of money. And the last time it happened in town, it hit the residents in North Carver about 2 weeks before Christmas. Your bill is of $10,000 is what he's doing in 2 weeks. So that can't happen again. And it concerns me a lot. I also agree that the developers should actually pay for that, but it's something that we don't have that in here. I think Lauren is absolutely right, and I appreciate that. It really needs to be in here. The developer pays for the infrastructure that may be needed.
Sorry, please.
Yeah, they had 5 or 6 things, but actually, the first one was for the TDR. Any cost for the infrastructure, I feel, should be absorbed by the builder, sidewalks, water, and any improvements to our water plant and extensions. And then what Sarah just brought up, maybe they should pick up the betterments for these people that aren't going to use it when it runs by their house, But definitely the cost of the water systems, because they're going to need water, most likely not do it from a well.
Well, I think the issue of betterments falls almost strictly and completely under the North Carver Water District. There's an
But
act
the betterments
commission.
only happen if it involves the public domain as well. So the developer puts it in. Excuse me?
It's mandatory hookups.
Right, but if the developer puts it in, I'm not sure whether the developer would pay for the whole water line, but if they do put it in, then it is a question of, now is everyone along the way being given betterments, even if they don't want the town?
I would find, as from town meeting a couple years ago, that I am not in favor of betterments
Yeah.
in situations like that,
Yeah.
as far as North Carver water supply goes, and the Plymouth Street project that we're dealing with now. Is there still plans to run the North Carver Water District down to the Silver Street, or is that on hold, or has that been?
After we did some planning and thinking about it, we came to the same conclusion: it wouldn't be good for Carver at this time, because you don't have the bylaws and protections in place to stop that type of growth that would be created, that would create additional costs. So we abandoned that and scaled back the project, looking at just basically following your master plan, saying that, the North Plymouth area, where you already have the infrastructure in the ground, and you have highway access, is really the appropriate place where you're going to be able to service increased density. So that's why we are here, hoping to work cooperatively with you guys over the next 6 months to multiple years down the road to come up with a plan that works and makes sense. That's a smart growth, development. That's really what that's what we're interested in working with you on.
Lauren, you mean North Carver, right?
Oh my God, I'm sorry, I was the Plymouth version for a lot of years, so
Yes.
I have to change gears. Thank you, Sarah, for the correction.
That was just one of it, with the 5. Okay.
I'm sorry, I took us off of the
No,
meeting.
betterments is something very important. The spacing out thing on the taxes, they can't totally buy it. If it's one house in South Carver, and that could equal, I don't know how many units in town, or in the receiving area.
Right, you can get bumped all the way up to 4
Oh, you mean the
with the TDR currently.
bonus kind of thing?
Yeah, it could be 24. No, close, right?
I guess.
One
yeah,
and a half times 2 times 6. Net use.
I'll have to take a look at that again.
But actually, it's multiple units versus one unit.
Yes.
So, service-wise, the multiple units are gonna use more than the one. So, I don't see where the tax thing is, relevant, talking about it's gonna cost more out of town. And Carver's, yes, it's large, but it's not that large. Myself, I worked as an EMT in town, I worked as a police officer. Yes, you get calls in South Carver, but most of these residential units, there's not that many calls, believe me. The next one, there would seem to be a little bad talk on solar, I thought, but gee, it's not beautiful, but you have a tax revenue, there's no noise, and no traffic. And
And it doesn't go to school.
it doesn't go to school. Yeah. Right, so it's not a bad neighbor in some respects, and I have one going across from me, and I'm very thankful for it. And so, a few hundred houses.
We were hoping to promote affordable housing to get off the 40B list, although I think it's a faint hope, but it's something to work towards to get back control of our town. And we'd like to see a much larger increase in 55 and older housing in this town. Personally, I'd like to see Carver be the retirement capital of Massachusetts, but that's just my personal opinion. It's not what we're working for here. But yes, single bedrooms for the young people, it's what I'd like to see more development, mixed-use towns, maybe increasing our village sizes is always potential. I mean, these are all recommendations that we can make to the planning board and the town.
But I think that solar land can also come back and get you, because I'll tell you right now, if you're working on a solar project, because our family's worked on them, and the technology of those things, you know, each panel used to be, you know, bring in 5 units of solar, and now that same panel will bring in 25 units of solar, and then eventually it's going to be something the size of this is going to be picked up by something like this. I mean, once they dig those foundations up, not so much the ones on the Cranberry Bog, but the ones that are in the upper land, they take up those foundations and they move those panels, and there's another use for building. It doesn't take it away, you know, like a sending district loses the right to build there.
Right.
And then you have timeframes on that. I don't know how long the timeframes on some of these units where you could switch it over and make it affordable. Well, how long does it have to be affordable for?
I would think we would have to deed that into...
Well, I'm saying, but I mean, I was just reading this thing here, the Carver housing thing. There's 40 units that are coming up off our list for affordability in a couple of years because it was only put on for a certain amount of years. So we're gonna go down 40 units in Carver because they only put the affordability restriction on it for so long. So, I mean, all this needs to be talked about. You're never gonna solve it in one night.
Right.
But I'm saying solar is great because right now it'll take that space up, but we're not converting that land. That land is still upland, buildable land. When that use goes through technology, those things come up and they're back to being buildable land.
Yeah.
So I just have a question. When the planning board, when you approve a home that's affordable in a development, for example, those affordable units have to have an affordable restriction on them.
But it's only a 20 year, is that?
Some are permanent deeds. I'm not sure about some of those other units.
Early on, when the affordable housing requirements came about, I believe it was a 20-year. If you owned your house for 20 years, it was yours, and then you could do it.
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Earlier on, it was a requirement of 20 years.
Was that something we could make a permanent restriction?
Carver already is.
Yeah.
You have to follow the DHCD guidelines for the inclusionary program. So,
Something that we could look into? I mean, that's horrible for us to be losing units.
No, I agree,
Yeah.
and I think a lot more needs to be done to approach the state with manufactured housing. Once the wheels are off and it's put down on a foundation, it should be considered a home.
Well, that's going to go over real well at town meeting. I'm sorry.
So the property I was referring to here says Meadowbrook Way, where affordability is due to expire in 2023 on 40 units. And then Chance Court is a single unit that's way out. But
so it must be to
It's
the right.
right behind the library.
Yeah, it's the development on the right and the left, because I think the left is owned by Carver Housing Authority.
And the right is owned by the state. But
It's actually, it's privately owned, but who's managing that? Yeah. And that could be, okay, so for the financing, because it's multiple units, at the time the state approved it, they're approving them for 20 to 30 years. And then at the end of that period, the state's been trying to refinance those with the new restrictions in perpetuity. But that's something we have to take a look into, is, learn more about that particular site next door.
Yeah. But I mean, like the unit at Chance Court, and I think there's 4 at Copper Latin Lane, I mean, I just feel like those should all be in perpetuity.
Mm-hmm.
If there's any way we can do that, but that's not what we're talking about here.
We're getting close to 7 o'clock.
questions or comments? We didn't get as far through, but I think we got a fairly good idea of what we're looking at. I know you all have your maps in front of you, and I wish I could overlay them all together to get a better feel. But I get the feeling that we're looking for high density to be spread out more than the villages. We have to, well, we have to give it opportunity. In other words, if we want to save land, then we're gonna have to present.
No, but I'm saying, North Carver along the Route 44.
Oh, yeah.
Railway, I say, build it up.
I
I
believe
mean, let them
it's-
get on the ramp and go. Let them come down, Shaw's is right there,
I
whatever.
believe 7 years ago, there was a proposal for 400 units, 40B up in that area. Was that the Cole property, or was that?
That was 250 40B rental units
Yeah,
on 221 acres.
and that was right on, and I would have a highway access, correct?
Well, there was no ramp at the time. Well,
It was proposed, I thought.
I'm sure they could have built one, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but that, we preserved that land, obviously. But there's a lot of other parcels along that 44 corridor that I think Judith is talking about.
yeah,
I think we also have to look at some part of South Carver because of the 495 access.
Yeah.
Again, where in that area does it make sense?
Hey, I like the South Meadow one. Most of those people are gonna go all Plymouth way, not come to us and go to 44. They're gonna go all.
Yeah, but that's not gonna be
Seven Road.
that's not gonna be a high density area.
Well, that new development, I'm just saying, if you get developments like that, that have accesses that shoot out a different town, that's beautiful
Yeah.
for us.
Yep.
Tremont Street can't take much more traffic than it has now. I don't know if you go to South Carver at all, if you look there.
We have copies
You
of
can't even
that.
get out of your driveway during the commute hours. That's how busy it is. So you have, after the last 2 weeks, anybody I spoke with in South Carver, they're not in favor of it there. Maybe in the center of town, or you mentioned North Carver, but that's a busy road now, very busy. It's busier than 58, definitely.
Yeah, and I know that there's not as much traffic access off of 495 because it's not the same type of corridor as the Route 3 corridor, but I think eventually it will be.
Yeah, it's basically the cut through from 195 to get to 3.
Yep.
So, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to ask if we could be sent copies of the village districts along with the underlying map and lot numbers, so we actually know what those are. To Duke's point, we can't expand the village district if, the neighbor over here doesn't want it, or, you could, but it's probably not a good thing to do. So if we had a picture of what those village districts look like, and I think you did send us a copy of the current zoning map.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but if you did you send that to us? You did. That's what I thought.
I think what would help too with some of this stuff, there's gotta be some areas in town that the infrastructure, the road size can be expanded to accommodate the full, more volume. Some roads are probably easier to expand than others. So I think you take that into consideration. If somebody wants to put a development, you might be able to get something from a developer to help expand on the roadways. Wait till the pot shop opens up and see the traffic on Tremont Street.
yeah, that's gonna increase the business.
Can I just throw one more idea?
Go through Manchester.
Just one idea that you could think about with these photovoltaic special permits. In the future, once you do have a TDR program and a land bank created, where you put the certificates that are created, you could require as a part of the special permit granting authority to stop the future conversion to developable land. If they're going to clear cut a forest to put it in, that they have to participate in the transfer development project and sell a portion of the development rights off for the future, for the permit to, clear cut all that land. These are the tools that you can just keep adding on to address a lot of the concerns as you're building this out. It's a dynamic process. You're going to add to this year after year.
That's a great idea, like 20 years later, this is the requirements if you want to change it over.
But I think the state just regulated the solar clear cutting on their own now, right? Isn't there a new bylaw that just got passed? state law that says you can't clear cut a wooded area for the solar if certain things. They made it more restrictive, I know that, where they can go and they can't.
I'm not familiar with it either.
Unfortunately, we are.
So Fran's gonna leave for zoning.
All right, Fran's gonna leave for zoning.
I do.
All right, I see it itching over there.
I'm all prepared.
I will entertain a motion to continue the discussion at our next meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We are now adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
Next meeting?